Why are we here today? We're here today because we're going to talk about goth subtypes and whether or not they exist. So I'm going to jump right into it and say, no, they do not exist. But there's a reason I'm covering the subject again. It's a good reason. The reason is our subculture is forever growing, which is an amazing thing. This is not necessarily a bad problem to have. Does it suck having to continuously repeat myself over and over again? I'm sure you've had to do it yourself. Yes. But if the reason is because our subculture is booming and there's more people becoming involved, that means in 10, 20, 30 years time, it means we're still going to be there. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. So what I want to talk about are goth subtypes. What do they mean? Why are we talking about them? When you live your life in a fishbowl with the growth of the internet and things like that, you have tons of people who think they're an expert on everything. Absolutely everything they see, they think they know it, and they assign their own definition, and for some ungodly reason, they will put themselves on a platform and write an article about it, or do a vlog about it, or just a stupid TikTok, or something that makes absolutely no sense. But then you have the wide-eyed, bushy-tailed baby bats getting hold of this information and saying, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do, or oh, this is true. No, it's not. So I want to talk to you about the origins of subtypes, because it's not something that somebody just completely pulled out of their ass. It is something that actually did exist, but it existed as a joke. Back in the day, and I'm talking early to mid-2000s, if you're a goth, the internet kind of sucked if you were looking for any information regarding the subculture. If you were lucky, you might find a GeoCities or an Angel Fire page for your favorite goth band, goth event, or any sort of information about goth. They were few and far between, and they had clip art that took 20 minutes for your computer to load them. So what we had were a thing called news groups that were kind of introduced around, I want to say, like the mid-90s. And the thing about news groups was it was kind of like message boards, and it was a great way for goths all over to come together. News groups came to be for a way for all of us to just share like old school snarky memes, for us to find fashion tips, ideas, for people to advertise their goth wares, new music, concerts, events, festivals like Convergence, all of these different things. And there are people who are still friends to this day that have met by way of those news groups. So they were a great invention for the time to really help a lot of goths find things in a period where there really was like little to no information available for us. So here's the thing about goth subtypes. Back during the newsgroup days, I want to say it was around maybe anywhere between like 95 to maybe 98, somebody made a list, and I believe that this was a collaborative effort, and they made a list of almost 200 goth types, and getting increasingly more and more elaborately ridiculous as it goes down the list. I think there's sneeze goth, goth who sneezes, and it was hilarious, and it was invented as a joke. But as it happens through the course of time, when these things sort of go through different incarnations, so as the years went on, the thing would resurface and people would get hold of this list, and some people would even draw characters that resembled parts of this. And then it got a little bit more serious as the time went on. So fast forward to today, with the original completely being created as a joke, nowadays people think that the concept of subtypes is an actual thing, that you're not just a goth, you're also a type of goth. And in order to partake in the subculture, you need to choose what type of goth you are. And that is so incredibly limiting, because what's expected is that they choose the type of goth that they are, and they have to kind of run with that. Because with that type of goth comes an attitude and aesthetic, and you cannot deviate from that aesthetic. Can you imagine being married to one aesthetic for the rest of your life? Oh God, would that be boring? So I hope that it comes with much pleasure to know that this is not the case. You wear whatever you want to dress like a traffic cone one day, you do you. But there is it doesn't lessen your ability to participate in the goth scene. It doesn't lessen your worth as a goth or anything like that to dare to deviate from any sort of one particular style. There's no uniform. Goth is a music-based subculture anyway. You could dress however you want, but if you do choose to dress kind of within the whole, I guess you can say, not really confines, because it's open to interpretation, But if you choose to dress in a goth sort of aesthetic, you're not bound to one type. If you feel like dressing in PVC one day, if you feel like dressing in lace another day, if you feel like going t-shirt and leggings another day, that is entirely your prerogative. And anything that anyone has to say about that either is sorely mistaken or not necessarily a goth in the first place and is subscribed to the whole internet idea of what a goth is. And it sucks that that kind of thing is out there causing these kind of misconceptions, because what it does is it invites people in and kind of makes them feel that they have to conform to a certain set of ideals or protocols, which don't really exist. There's one, and that's just, listen to the music. When I first got involved and I first started going to goth nights, I was intrigued to look around the room and see everybody in their goth finery, even if they were, by today's standards, considered dressed down. It was great to see everybody's aesthetic. And I didn't look around the room and say pastel goth, trad goth, romantic goth. I didn't say anything like that. I didn't think anything like that because they didn't exist. But I never thought at any point looking around the room that I was looking at a different type of goth. I just looked around the room and thought, I am among goths. I never judged anybody by their look, but what I did like was the variation. I like the fact that every week somebody let a different part of themselves shine through. And the interesting part about that is the part of themselves that they allowed to shine through was entirely inspired by the music that they were surrounding themselves in at that particular time, and it was so obvious. And it's a beautiful thing to see. It's like you get to see a person listening to a type of music and really immersing themselves in it and feeling it so much that you can literally see it head to toe. Like you've been listening to Ethereal. Music is something that brings us all together. It's something deep. It's something personal. It's meaningful. It's cathartic. It's evocative. It's all of these things. And to be able to look at a person and physically see exactly what they've been listening to, it's kind of like looking at a part of their soul. Break it down into just a uniform based on aesthetic and hashtag is doing it a massive disservice and turning into something just cheap and crappy and tacky. I think it's important to kind of live your life without any set of limitations. And if you're part of the subculture, it's because you chose to be here. And if you're here, and you're here because you listen to the music, and there shouldn't be anyone or anything that tells you that, well, I have to do these things. There's pressure when it comes to everything. And you don't feel the pressure any more than you do when you're new. Young or old, the baby bats come in varying ages, and new or old, there always comes that kind of pressure to fit in, and it's not necessary. When it comes to things like subtypes, subgenres, etc., they do exist, but that's with reference to music and music only. So when you are in the goth subculture, you are a goth, regardless of what you're wearing. It doesn't matter. You can dress in any aesthetic that you so desire, as long as you listen to the music. That's really all that matters. But the subgenres, not subtypes, do apply to music, and there are many. Some of the subtypes people try to tout today as being part of the subculture are actually subcultures on their very own. Like one of them is like industrial. That's its very own category in itself. It's an entirely different subculture, entirely different genre of music. Is it adjacent? Yeah, in a lot of ways it is adjacent, because you'll find a lot of goths that listen to industrial music and vice versa. And you would be hard-pressed if you went to a goth club and didn't say, hear at least some industrial music, because we do, and as we always have, combined our nights, because it's how we kept together. It's how we kept things going. We would combine forces, and then we'd share a dance floor, or if we're lucky enough, we would have 2 separate rooms. And that's not to say that, they're not any less of a subculture, but they're definitely not a subtype of goth. If there ever were any, it wouldn't be industrial, it wouldn't be rave, it wouldn't be metal, it wouldn't be any of those things, because that's another thing that I do tend to hear a lot. Because gothic metal has the term gothic in it, they automatically think that metal is also a goth subtype. Metal is a subculture all on its very own, and if you go to a very passionate metalhead and try to tell them that they're a goth, let me know how that goes for you. But these things are not to kind of discourage you or to make you feel at a disadvantage. They're not to make you feel like you don't know anything, because none of us know everything. Nobody knows everything. However, as a baby bat, you know a lot less. And to tell you this is to empower you and make you know more things, because knowing things makes you feel more comfortable in your surroundings and in your own skin. Because if you are a goth, you're listening to the music and you want to be part of the subculture, isn't it better to know more about it? And I know a lot are very sensitive when it comes to things like being given information. They throw out the word, oh, elitist, oh, gatekeeper. Let me tell you something. A gatekeeper is going to give you no information. They're just going to slam that door in your face and say bye-bye. But when it comes to people telling you things, a gatekeeper or an elitist is not going to bombard you with information, because the whole goal of being a gatekeeper is to keep you out. They're trying to push you out of their playground and say, no, this is mine. They're not going to tell you crap, but if they're giving you information, it's because they want you to know. It's because they see that you're into the thing and they want you to be part of it. Nobody likes to hear that they're wrong. And it's kind of it can be a little bit of an embarrassing feeling when you get something wrong and somebody has to correct you. There's always that feeling of kind of embarrassment that comes along with that. It's coming from a good place. I hate to say suck it up, but in the beginning, just suck it up. Just take the information, file it away. It's coming from a good place, because if somebody comes to you and they're just going to tell you flat out that you're wrong and or insult you and provide no information, no correction, that's gatekeeping. That's being an elitist. And that is a person you want to kind of avoid, because they're not very nice. One day, in the not too distant future, when you find yourself in a position that you are correcting somebody that is either repeating misinformation that they've heard somewhere, or they heard this song and these are the lyrics, but they can't quite remember the name of the band, but you remember, and you are in that position where you are the one that's going to be either correcting or providing that information, just make sure to remember where you came from. Remember the very things that scared the absolute crap out of you and made you feel embarrassed or even enough at a disadvantage to where you might be scared off of the scene entirely, and make sure to treat them the opposite of that. Because I can't tell you the amount of people when I was younger that were part of the scene and had found themselves by way of inquisition. If you've seen my previous videos, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it just scared the living crap out of them, and they never came back. So just remember where you came from. And this is the internet after all. And if you don't scare them, somebody else will. But with all of that being said, I'm going to give you a little glimpse of the goth subtypes list that I was talking about, just to show you how utterly ridiculous they were. As I go through this list, there are so many dead giveaways of its era of origin based on all of the 90s references. Take Keroppi and Batsumaru and Hello Kitty Goth. Back in the 90s, suburban malls had this Japanese chain store called Topkapi, which sold a ton of Sanrio products, and they focused on characters. There were alt girls who chose their one character, and they had every single product they carried. I had one friend who was a die-hard Keroppi, and then another who was a Batsumaru. The more I read through this list, the more it's giving me suburban American goth kid. The Crow Goth. For many years since that film's release, it was a goth staple, and it was never a question as to what you were wearing for Halloween. For the little goth sprout, if it was the 90s, you were slapping on some crow makeup and then you were going off somewhere to brood. Preferably a cemetery. There's some references here that some of you might be too young to remember since it pertains to the news groups, like flaming or spraying. A flame goth, flaming. Or as it's popularly known today, closer to something like trolling, but more of, you know, the person on social media that's got to disagree with everything that you say just to be a jerk and just start crap. That's what it is. It is basically a drama-causing jerk goth. So I see quite a few things here on this list that might come close to getting a person canceled by today's standards, like manic goth, homo goth, lesbi goth, gangsta goth. As the list goes on, depending on your age, you might find yourself gasped once or twice. I myself have to provide a thorough disclaimer to my Gen Z friend anytime I show him a film that precedes the 2000s. There are certain parts of the film, The Craft and Weird Science, I remember, that made him audibly gasp. Can you imagine if people took this whole list in its entirety seriously? Like, you'd be at the club doing your thing and suddenly have Shy Goth. Number 74, who's prone to hiding under and behind things, ducking for cover beneath your cloak. How about number 70, Alka Goth, the alcoholic goth? No, don't get Tony some help. Let's give him a name instead. Number 98 and number 99, old school goth and new school goth. One doesn't like anything after Bauhaus broke up. The other doesn't like anything before Bauhaus broke up. Uh-oh, better get number 81, Litagoth, on the case before things get ugly. Number 128 pokes fun at something that I remember all too well. The Not a Goth. This was a period where you attended every goth event, had an extensive selection of goth music, had an undeniably goth aesthetic, however would furiously deny being in any way associated with goth. You would often hear them exclaim, "I'm not a goth." Number 111, Cough Goth. That one didn't age well. If 1995 us knew what 2023 us know now, I don't know if we would believe us if we told us. Number 110, Weekend Goth. Only goth on the weekends. They're normies during the week and went to goth clubs during the weekend. Number 132 is an interesting one because I'm sure you can equate them to something today. Another net goth reference, but it's basically another version of flame goth. But in this version, their combative contrarian nature cannot resist anything, and that includes feeding the trolls. Number 150, Club Kid Goth. In the New York City club scene, we got a lot of limelight and tunnel crossover, so the kids with their mile-high platform wedges, plastic garb, glitter, hair in all of the colors, they were not an uncommon sight. If you'd like a reference, please see the movie Party Monster. This is poking some lighthearted fun at those who took inspo from those looks. Number 140, Pyro Goth. Fire. Reasoning? Just fire. Number 154, My Little Pony Goth. Some goths would not dare attend a night out without a set of massive knee-length poofy ponyballs. Whether it be worn in pigtails or one big ponytail, it was clip-in hair extensions made from something called Kinecolon jumbo braid. Some people wore theirs so much that you didn't recognize them without it. It became part of them, and then eventually became sentient and attacked those who dare stand too closely. Number 174, Cover Goths. It's an interesting one because it mirrors a phenomenon that's happening today, and it's this trend where people are rocking what kind of looks like kiss makeup, a complete and total rival of number 168, the Casual Goth.